40% of that phosphorus. So it's not bioavailable in the body, and the body's only absorbing a small amount of it. On the other hand, you have this inorganic phosphorus. So this is the type that's added to foods as a preservative. And I'll show you some examples of that, but this type is about 90 to 100% absorbed by the body. And it's really recommended that everyone with chronic kidney disease should avoid this type of phosphorus. So if someone's having high phosphorus levels and they're in the later stages, I would first look at this inorganic phosphorus, see if we can find some sources of that in the diet, because a lot of packaged foods do include this inorganic phosphorus. And then if they're still eating meat, cutting back on eating meat and doing more of the beans, less phosphorus is going to be absorbed that way. So it would just require Dr. Almeida just a little more planning, but it's definitely, out of all those options, beans are definitely still going to be the best one, even in the later stages. And then, if they still got to eat something, so, if they have to do a phosphorus binder or something like that, then that would probably be the next step. So I'll show you guys some examples of the different kinds of phosphorus too, so you can see that. But I also wanted to talk about potassium. So potassium is another big one that gets talked about a lot. So the amount of potassium to eat is going to depend on your lab values. So again, it's one of those things that's kind of different for everyone, but I put some general recommendations here. So typically, if your potassium level is normal, so we used to think that everyone with kidney disease had to follow a low potassium diet. So you couldn't eat bananas, tomatoes, avocados.
I love good salad, good tomatoes, but in I love bananas. But I eat bananas. But I love tomatoes.
Yeah.
First tomatoes. So is that good or bad?
I'm gonna get to that. So we used to think that everyone had to avoid all those foods, but now we know from research that potassium has a lot of other beneficial effects in the body. And all those fruits and vegetables with potassium, they have so many other benefits. And the last thing we would want you to do is eat less vegetables because you're trying to eat less potassium. So typically, if your potassium level is within the normal range, and that's something, that you get checked on your blood work every time you go to the doctor, then you don't need to limit your intake of potassium from those natural sources, because they can actually have beneficial effects on your blood pressure, helping to lower that. But if you're in this high potassium range, so if you go to the doctor and the Dr. Almeida tells you your potassium is high, then that is likely a sign that you may need to limit, the intake of some of those, like the tomatoes and avocados and bananas.
What about grapes?
Grapes would be considered like low potassium fruit. Cabbage is lower in potassium. So the thing with potassium is it's basically in every single food. So you're never going to be able to avoid it completely. So really, if you're it's important to look at the portion size, because you can take a portion size of low potassium food like grapes, and if you end up eating the whole bag, then you just had a high potassium food because you ate so much of them. But
the whole bag.
Oh, I know. That's just
yeah, I don't even that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps 6 every other day or something like that.
Yeah. And then another good one, is an example with the tomatoes. So, if you're having just a slice of tomato on a sandwich, or, some diced tomatoes on a salad, that's a whole lot less than if you're having a jar of spaghetti sauce and, having that, because it's more concentrated. But yeah, if you are having problems with your potassium, or if you're having questions, that's a good thing that I can definitely help you with, because I can give you, an exact amount of potassium to be eating, and we can do some planning there on, maybe how many high potassium foods you can eat in a day or in a week or something like that. But there are some other causes of high potassium, so it's not always because of your diet too. So there's some other things to look at there as well. And then sometimes your kidneys are actually filtering out more potassium, and you can have low potassium levels. So that can sometimes happen too. And if that happens, then you probably need to eat more foods that are high in potassium. So it can really be anything on that range. And so similar to phosphorus, there's actually two types of potassium as well. So there's the potassium that's naturally found in pretty much all foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans. So this natural form of potassium, the body really only absorbs less than 60% of it. So it doesn't affect your potassium as much since the body is not absorbing all of it. There's a second type of potassium, which we call potassium additives, which are added to foods as a preservative. So it's just like the phosphorus additives, they also do potassium additives. And these are highly absorbed by the body. So if you eat too much of these, they can make your potassium shoot up really quickly. So this is really the type that you want to stay away from, even if you have normal levels, just because it can build up. So I'm gonna show some examples. We can go on to
right on his mouth.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have brought the magnifying glasses. Well, this is gonna be even smaller. You probably won't like this slide. So I took some copies of some food labels here, so to show you guys some examples of the added potassium and phosphorus. So this so these are the examples of the preservatives that they can add to food. And so these are really highly absorbed by the body, so they can really affect your blood levels of potassium and phosphorus. So this first one on the left, it is it's a cola, it's a dark soda. So you can see in the ingredients, it has potassium benzoate, and then in parentheses, it says as a preservative right here. And then it also has phosphoric acid. So those are two really common ones that are added to a lot of drinks, especially dark sodas. Pretty much every single soda has these two preservatives in it. So a lot of times, you'll hear the recommendation, stay away from dark sodas, and that's why. Tea, like, so a lot of the bottled teas, if you're getting like Lipton, the diet teas and stuff like that, they will sometimes have those additives too. But if you're making your tea at home with tea bags, it's not going to have any of those preservatives. So basically those preservatives allow it, a bottle of cola or a bottle of tea to sit on the shelf for 10 years and, not go bad because it has preservatives in it. So that's in general just one that's good to kind of avoid there. This next one in the middle is an example of bread, like a sliced bread product. So you can see in this second to last line, it has monocalcium phosphate. So anytime you see the word phosphate or phosphorus or anything with the PHOS, that's a sign that it has added phosphorus in it.
So that's big.
Yeah, that's the kind you want to stay away from. But the good thing about these packaged products like the bread and any like crackers or anything like that is a lot of times you can find another product that's similar where the company just has chosen not to use those preservatives. So it's
Taking all our time in the grocery store reading.
I know it definitely takes a little time to figure out what you like. But that's another thing, I can help with on that end too. If you need some certain product ideas or something like that, I'm happy to share some things that I know about. But another thing is, they can change the ingredients at any time. So it requires some continuous looking at the ingredients to make sure it doesn't have anything in there too. And then the last one is an example of some coffee creamer. So this is a big one that gets a lot of people. If you're having high potassium or phosphorus levels, a lot of times they can be because of coffee creamer because they use this dipotassium phosphate. So it's an additive and they combine potassium and phosphorus. So got both of them in there. So if you are having problems with that, a lot of times it can be better to just use like regular milk because it's not going to have those additives in them. But like I said, there's also some brands that choose not to use those additives in their coffee creamer. So it is possible to find some different options too. And if you ever feel like, you don't have options, definitely come to me because I can help you find some. Do you guys have any questions about these labels? No? Okay. I brought an example too, so you can see what it looks like on the label. This is some cheese, but you know it's shelf stable, so you don't have to refrigerate it. So it has a lot of preservatives in it. So if you want to see on there, you can see the different phosphorus preservatives in the ingredients. Okay, so now we'll talk about how you can put these things together and, you know, plan out your meals and make sure you're having the right portions of everything. Oh, I forgot to add in the packets, I included 2 handouts, one on potassium and one on phosphorus. So it has some food lists in there. If you ever find your name. No, at the end of the slides, I've stapled it on there. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. So if you ever find yourself in a position where you know, you're wondering which foods are high in potassium and which ones are low in potassium, I included a list for you on there. So when you're planning your meals, it's good to include more fruits and vegetables and more whole grains and also more plant-based proteins. So can someone name an example of a whole grain? Yeah. So whole grains would be things like brown rice, yeah, wheat bread,